Hey everyone, I'm Ali. I'm with Real. I hope you're having a great day. Welcome to my channel. Here we like to talk about market updates with regards to the real estate market here in Calgary. I talk about activity rates, listing increases, sales increases, and things like that. I'm a very analytical person, so you'll notice that in my videos here. But thank you for visiting, and I hope you find this useful. So let's just get right into it. So the activity rate for the month of March was 40%. To give you kind of an idea of how we started the year, in January it was 38%, in February it was 39%. So as a whole, the activity rate has been about 40%, which is the number of sales divided by the number of active listings that we have in the market right now. Now, it isn't location specific, it isn't segment specific, it's just an overarching metric that I use to kind of keep an idea of how Calgary as a whole has been working. So 40% is considered a balanced market. I've been seeing that a little bit more in my business where, my buyers are able to negotiate a little bit more. My sellers, depending on how we price the property, they're either been sitting a little bit longer or we're selling, in one day, for example, right? So it really depends on where we are listing in the property, where the property is located, amenities, things like that, right? So overall, we're about 40%, which is a balanced market. Now, in terms of pricing per segment, we're still seeing that, detached homes are priced around 732,500, which is up about 2% from the previous month, and it's up about 2% from the previous year, March as well. Attached and townhouses are both down between 2 to 4% from the previous month and 1 to 2% from the previous year. And apartments are up from last year about 3%, but they're down from the previous month by 1%. A lot of this has been driven by buyer sentiment and, their hesitation to get into the market, even though, rates have been declining. There is time for them to do their due diligence. They aren't competing as much as they used to. And there's more inventory available to them to select from. It's just this overarching, okay, well, how are these tariffs going to affect my employment? How are they going to affect, my spouse's employment? How are they going to affect my industry as a whole? And do I want to take on that mortgage now to buy my first home or to upsize or, kind of handle the market the way I want to handle the market? So this is what's been happening with our market. And I'm sure it's the same, in other regions as well. But in particular in Calgary, we are seeing that buyer sentiment is a little bit slower, and like the increase that we saw from month over month is great, but because it's offset by the number of new listings as well, it hasn't increased our activity, so to speak, right? So buyers are still getting off of the fence and are now jumping in because of spring market, but it isn't as big of a it isn't outpacing the number of sale listings that are coming on to allow for that market to shift into the seller's favor, if that makes sense. So we're seeing these types of things in terms of locations where there's a lot of activity happening, like months of inventory in the south part of Calgary has been higher, depending on which part you're in. Like in the south district, it's about 1.3 months, 39 months of inventory, which is really good and a really strong seller's market. Whereas in the northeast, for example, for apartments, we have about 4.4 months of inventory. So quite a bit of inventory available in the northeast in terms of apartments. So it really depends on what part of the city you're looking and how it's affecting the pricing that we're going to be seeing. So it's really important if you're a seller, you need to have that agent or that real estate professional, come and sit down with you and kind of price out the property based on what's going on locally, rather than what's going on as a market or having an automation kind of spit out a value for you, because you aren't able to get into those nitty gritties of how to price your property according to where you live, right? And in terms of buyers, if your jobs are in an industry that isn't affected by tariffs, or you're in oil and gas. I've had a couple of people that have worked in oil and gas tell me that a 10% tariff, even though significant, isn't going to break the bank when it comes to oil and gas companies. So if you're in those industries and your job is a little bit more secure, now is your time to purchase a property for the items that I mentioned. I mean, you're able to check your due diligence, you're able to, negotiate, you're able to select a home that you like. And now is that time for you to kind of jump in before all the chaos kind of settles and buyers are now able to jump back in. Now you have competition for those listings, and that might change the way the dynamics of our real estate market to maybe a more favorable seller market where you have the lower hand now, right? So let's chat if you have are interested in kind of looking into the market. If you're a buyer, kind of tipping your toes into it, let's talk about a plan to kind of get you going. If you're a seller, we really should sit down and kind of price your property out just so that you have an understanding of what it really is going to be valued at compared to the rest of the city. And that number might be lower than where you were last year, for example, but there's a reason for that, right? So it really depends on what your goals are when you're considering to sell. Hopefully you were able to get a good amount of information from this update. If you have any questions or anything like that, please feel free to reach out. All of my information is going to be below. Please feel free to reach out, and hopefully we can maybe grab a coffee and go from there. But thank you so much for taking the time to sit through this, and hope you have a wonderful day. Talk to you soon.